say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? Once again, we take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you individually, and all of you together collectively, for allowing the co-creation of this interaction and this transmission through this gateway, in this way, at this time. Once again, each and every time you allow such a communication to occur, it affords our civilization an opportunity to see that many more ways that the infinite has of expressing itself within creation. So we thank you for this gift of sharing, gift of exchange, and gift of expanded awareness. We would like to begin this transmission with a few different ideas this day of your time. First and foremost, we would like to acknowledge that an individual known to many of you on your planet has made a transition into absolute awareness of the existence of what you would call extraterrestrial beings and spirit beings. This is the individual you understand to be named as Carl Sagan. In this way, you will find that this individual has translated into the non-physical and now is very aware of the existence of many different types of life. We would perhaps chance to say he is aware that there are billions upon billions. It is received and understood that the message sent back is, I had to play a certain part in a certain way at a certain time. It is understood that this part had to be played so that there would be the creation of the polarity necessary for individuals to decide for themselves what they wanted to believe, which way they wanted to go, and how it was to be that information would be released and played out in time and in timing in the society to which this individual used to belong. The irony now is that its individual in spirit will actually in some senses participate in the assisting of the acceleration of the day and time when and where future meetings between extraterrestrials and your people will occur. The idea, therefore, is, as has been expressed, yes, send your support, send your love. For this individual now sees the bigger picture of the part that this individual played in the physical life, and now has awareness of what the entire agenda, at least on a certain level, is really all about. We would now like to continue this transmission beyond this acknowledgement, in the acknowledgement of another type of being that many of you know about, in what you would call your spirit of the season, as we recognize it upon your planet, in your culture at this time, specifically, the idea of what you call your Santa Claus. All right, we understand. We would like to express the idea of, shall we say, the origin of this idea and the recognition that there actually, in a sense, and in a certain context, is such a being. In what you would call very ancient recognition of the archetype that exists in your collective consciousness, you will recognize that, as many of your psychologists have begun to understand, an archetypal expression, that is, a representative portion of the collective consciousness of your entire culture, or at least a large portion of it, by no means, in any way, shape, or form, means that it is imaginary, in the sense that it doesn't exist. Archetypes, though in a sense generated by the collective consciousness, do experience autonomy, do know themselves as individuated levels of consciousness, because you are made in the image of the infinite creation, and every thought you have can do nothing but help but create a real reality on some level, in some way. Many of the idea of what you call your nature spirits and other forms of archetypal presentation, mythological beings as such, are, in a sense, concocted and created by the combined energy of the collective consciousness of your planet, in a sense, given life, given breath, given reality, given existence, because they represent a facet or a faction of the collective being that all of you together are. As such, they do, as we have said, have a type of autonomy, a type of individual experience. The idea is that this being that you have come to know in your modern-day language as Santa Claus, in perhaps the older vernacular as Santa Claus, is really a nature spirit in that sense. And you have, in some senses, I will not mean this necessarily in a negative way, but in some senses distorted some of the original ideas, or shall we say transmuted or translated some of the original energies representative of this being into your modern contexts. In some senses having, shall we say, lost some of the original understanding of what this being was all about, but still to some degree representing the original attributes of this entity. In your understanding of the idea of Santa Claus as a gift giver, this is a more fundamental recognition of the idea of the power of that particular entity, of that nature spirit. And the idea is that it is to some degree representative of the concept of the third law, what you put out is what you get back, the idea of what many of you call the karmic balance, in that in your modern vernacular, the idea, colloquially put, of not being nice and so getting no presents, or being good and getting favors, is a reflection of the original idea that this was, in a sense, a karmically reflective entity. In other words, it reflected exactly the idea of the energy of any particular entity or individual it encountered. So the idea of negative intention was reflected back as negative experience. Positive intention reflected back as positive experience by this being, by this nature spirit, by this archetypal facet of your collective reality. In many ways, because it is an exemplification of the idea of nature, it expresses, as many ideas of nature spirit do archetypally, many attributes found in nature, in a sense, a combination or collection of many attributes found in the idea of the animal kingdom and so forth. So, for example, the idea of what you now have relegated to be the reindeer of Santa Claus is not so much the idea of reindeer pulling a sleigh, but the idea of the association to that particular animal totem, if you will, and also the recognition that the hoof prints left in the snow, in that sense, in many occasions, do not actually belong to the reindeer, but to this entity itself. For it has, in that sense, some of the attributes of the reindeer, including the idea of the hoofs. When it is taking physical form, it does not always exist in the idea of what you would call physical material form. But when it concentrates its energy, or its energy is concentrated by a collective awareness or a collective focus on the part of your people, thus giving it more chance to materialize or crystallize into a sort of solid form in your reality, it does take on the attributes of the idea of nature, including the idea of animalistic attributes from time to time. The idea also is that it exemplifies many other facets and attributes that you have, in that sense, attributed to the idea of Santa Claus. The idea of the red suit, in that sense, is actually the idea of what might be called a cloak of night. But in this sense, the idea of red is that it represents the fundamental lifeblood of the being, and the idea of the vibration of grounded reality and what might be called the root chakra of your energy system. Thus, it is a representation of something very, as you would say, earthy and fundamental in the idea of being rooted into nature, and the representation of the manifestation of gifts and abundance that are all around you in nature, that which was always there for you, always is now, and always shall be. And so on that fundamental level, the idea of the gift-giving idea of nature represented in this particular archetypal facet or entity. So, do understand that it is actually quite possible, from time to time, when the circumstances warrant it, to actually find yourself interacting in the appropriate state with this actual entity, though you may not recognize it in the way that you have depicted it exactly in your society. You will find that it is actually, shall we say, in a sense, a changeling, a shapeshifter, in that it may present itself in a variety of ways, depending upon, again, what it is reflecting back to you, if and when it is encountered, and also representative in general of the collective, shall we say, spirit or emotional mood of the collective society, whether the whole society or a large group, as it may be occurring at any given moment. So, allow yourself to understand this being does exist, though not always in the way that you may think of it. And in that sense, it is quite possible to encounter this being when you get in touch with the idea of abundance, of nature, in its most fundamental form, in its most well-grounded and earthily rooted form. And when you allow yourself to be out in the idea of the wilderness, from time to time when conditions are right, this entity can be manifested and can be encountered, just like many other kinds of ideas of spirit contact can manifest and can occur with regard to the natural kingdom of things, as it is representative of that portion of your collective consciousness and a reflection back to you of attributes each and every one of you individually contains. We would like to continue this dialogue, this day of your time, with another idea that is a little bit more of a reinforcement of the concept of being in the moment, understanding that every change is a complete change, and that knowing that every change you make, no matter how small you may deem it to be, is a total change, a complete change, and that it is a representation of the fact that you are, with every change, literally, a new person in that new moment. Having no connection to the other person you were a moment ago. And the reason for this, and what we would like to reinforce about this now, is because whatever it is you deem yourself to be, here and now, whatever changes you make and whatever new definitions you have of yourself are the definitions of this moment, and you, the you are right now, never were the other person. Never, ever, ever. Every moment is discrete. Every moment is unique. Every moment only exists now. And as we have said a few times, what you may perceive in your physical reality as a succession of moment to moment to moment to moment is all the same one moment, because there's only one moment in creation, and that's now. It is all the same one moment from different points of view, expressed in a linear mode, because that's the definition of physical reality. Nevertheless, understand this. What you experience as remembering your past, even in this life, who you believe you were a moment ago, even though this doesn't happen, you are who you are now. You have never existed before this now. You were not anyone else a moment ago, except in the larger sense of the bigger you that contains all the moments, all the lives, all the separate expressions of the whole entity. But speaking on a personality level, as a person, the person you are now is here and now for the very first time, and this person never was any other person. The idea, therefore, of the experience you have of remembering yourself a moment ago, as you think you used to be, is a relationship you create from the present with another person, and in honoring and sending unconditional love, in honoring that person for the state they represent of the total being that you are, you make a connection of continuity to them from now. They do not influence you from then. You do not come forward from then, being influenced literally by the experience they have in their reality. You make the connection from the now to them, and you honor them and love them, and in so doing draw upon and include the idea of their experience into the definition of your experience of yourself here and now, but there is actually no literal continuity in time. The past does not create the present. The present creates the past. So understand that right here, right now, you are this person for the very first time, and you have never been anyone else. The idea is that as you begin to realize that all of these supposed versions of you think you have been are actually discretely different people, you can begin to really decide more clearly who you are, who you want to be, and in so being, decide consciously to make the connections you want to make to the so-called past or future selves that are simultaneously coexistent with you side by side, as your ability to draw from their experiences to create the definition of your present here and now, just as other beings that you might call other versions of you might be doing with you by honoring you, connecting to you, acknowledging and recognizing your existence consciously, and making the connection to draw from your experience to decide whether or not your experience is apropos for the experience and definition that they are choosing to be in their now moment. But that's a different person. Yes. Totally, absolutely, completely, on every different level. So, we would like to simply point this out to you so that when your mind can, in a sense, get a handle on this idea, it will function as a very powerful tool of transformation for you to understand that you are not connected in any way, shape, or form to anything that you don't deem to be connected to, that you do not choose to be connected to. You define yourself in the here and now utterly and absolutely, and that is that, as they say in your language. One more item we would like to remind you of. Again, from time to time, though this is rare for a variety of reasons, but from time to time we will again suggest a particular literary work that exists on your planet as being possibly beneficial for many of you. And we have already suggested this once. We will suggest it once again to allow you to understand that we deem this to be of great benefit to you, especially in that it has come through a member of your society and can, in a sense, come through all of you as you experience yourself. And once again, the titlement of this work is Conversations with God, by the entity that you call Walsh. We would recommend, and again, this is rare, you read this work again and again and again until you breathe it, until you live it, until it is your very essence in every cell. Because if you do, and when you do, you will understand everything you need to understand to be the self-realized reflection of the infinite you were designed to be. You can get all this information and have gotten all this information from a variety of sources. You can get all this information, and many times do get this information from your own selves. This is not in any way, shape, or form to, I stress this importantly, not in any way, shape, or form to negate the idea that you yourself have the ability to get all the information we have or any other source may have. This is not to send you running to any idea of another teacher and take away the responsibility of your self-empowerment. This is to put you in touch directly with your self-empowerment and recognize your equality with us, with every being, and even with what you call the idea of God. The idea, again, read it, absorb it, be it. It is one of the greatest gifts you have given to yourselves, to now bring into reality and manifestation this particular work. It is a reflection of the fact that it is time for you to all understand this information, and of course, what that means is that there's no more excuses for not being who you want to be. So, we once again extend to each and every one of you our deep appreciation in being allowed to communicate with you in this way at this time. Once again, we thank you for the great gift you are giving to us of this sharing. And in return, we ask you now, in what way may we